and Peninsular Malaysia. And in Peninsular Malaysia, the western part, the western coast, is better connected than the eastern coast. So the divides, the various divides in that come with the use of this new technology are a concern for politics, because there are potential danger for social political stability, for social cohesion, and hence governments all around the world usually pursue strategies against the digital divide, including in Southeast Asia, various programs. But not only governments are active to overcoming that, but also companies. Why? Because the digital divide means that not everybody who might be able to purchase something is connected. So it is in the interest of companies to increase their markets, expand capitalism. And so companies engage in very selected activities to reach out to new companies and hence do a little bit to smoothen digital divides in a certain way, while if they charge a lot, they might also increase the digital divide in the social and financial regard. Now, in the case of Malaysia, one image comes to mind. No, it's not there on the left with the arrow on the 2020, it's the one in the center. Of course, the central figure for the politics and the economic and social development of Malaysia since the 1990s was Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, who became prime minister in 1991 and stayed in power of a very long, 1981, sorry. And he launched this initiative, Vision 2020, Wawasan 2020, 2020 in 1991, as a formula, an objective, a dream of a fully developed nation by the year 2020, magic year. And the core innovation in there was that the reasoning was, well, if you're launching it now in the early 1990s, we want to be fully developed like the United Kingdom, like Japan. We should not imitate the course of development in the United Kingdom or in Japan over the course 200 years, meaning it doesn't make sense in 1991 to emphasize on steam technology or to emphasize on the railways in the old way with steam or on sailing boats. Rather, it makes sense to emphasize in the current technology of the 1990s, which is okay. Can you hear me, Jan van der Putten? Sorry. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, bisa.
Okay, sorry. Okay, just saw a chat. So anyway, the reasoning was, okay, 1990s, it's not, it doesn't make sense to invest in an industry, in a core industry that is 100 years old. Rather, invest in the technology of the future, where Malaysia can get a bigger market share from the beginning. And so the inside the Wawasan 2020 Vision 2020 was a very strong emphasis on information and computer technology and on knowledge society, knowledge economy, on the use of the internet. So that was among the countries of Southeast Asia, one of the first who emphasized so strongly on the knowledge economy, as it was called back then, maybe together with Singapore, who had a similar strategy also in the 1990s. And in hindsight, this is a recent study by the World Bank assessing that the Malaysian digital economy strategy was overall rather successful. So it seems that Mahathir left a legacy with this overall strategy. But of course, as you know, he was the prime minister for a certain time. Then he was no longer prime minister for 2 terms. Namely, he was not prime minister 5 and 6, but then he became again prime minister 7 and 8 for a short time. So how did this emphasis on the internet and then communication technology survive the rule of Mahathir under his 2 successors? So there's there we go. The secret is that the Malaysian strategy, the digital strategy, was cast into these Malaysia plans. It's a bit similar to Repelita in Indonesia, where you have 5-year plans. Same thing here in Malaysia. They're just called Malaysia plans and not Repelita. But they every 5 years there's a new emphasis, an overall formula of the development, the planned development of the country next 5 years, with a long-term vision, and then it's broken down, as you can see on the center. It's broken down into various initiatives, strategies, programs, projects. And here, for instance, you have already in the 7th Malaysia Plan, 1996 to 2000, you have e-economy, e-public services, e-community, e-learning, e-sovereignty. In the 2nd and the 6th Malaysia Plan, you have multimedia technology as one of the things and that were considered to be of importance. And so this basically is the secret how the Malaysian emphasis from the Mahathir era survived basically 30 years, including in the years where he no longer was the prime minister of the country. Why? Because he set up a machinery of bureaucrats and of government administration that would continue working on the implementation of the internet and of high tech in the old terminology, even if the prime minister was somebody else. And so this also extends to various programs on fighting the digital divide in Malaysia, including on the provinces or in the states. And also it was accompanied by dozens of publications from public universities on the digital divide. So you have a very rich body of literature on the digital divide in Malaysia. A part of it is motivated by social concern. Some of it is a social concern that is inspired by certain currents within Islam, or within a kind of social concern about social democratic kind of concern. If I think of some kind of I would call them social democratic Chinese from Malaysia. There's this kind of concern in Malaysia, and researching about the digital divide is part of that. But it's not only from those quarters, it's also from other people who look at how the state as an entity can survive the various challenges that come along in relation with the implementation of the internet. So, right. Now, let's get into the buzzword, the 4th Industrial Revolution. On the right side, you have the images of 3 people from Germany. Mr. Kagermann, who was the CEO of SAP, the software company that is responsible also for a lot of the software that our universities are using. Then is Mr. Lucas from the BMBF, the Federal Ministry of Education and Research. And he has a Professor Walster from the Saarland University. They together authored this article that is here on the lower right. It's 10 years old, so they can celebrate right now. That's when they launched the term Industry 4.0. In it, they claimed that the internet, the use of the internet in a new way, would pave the way to the 4th Industrial Revolution. And basically, the introductory part says, Germany, national interest, needs new technology to remain relevant economically in the 21st century. They say their innovation is that they couple the Internet of Things, which is a term that was popular in America already before them, with a new thing that they call Internet of Services. So that's the claim for innovation. And they claimed that this whole thing would launch an entire new wave of industrial revolution. So as example industries, they gave artificial intelligence, smart factories, smart cities, new kinds of robotics, all sorts of things that you also find today a lot realized. Okay, as academics, first of all, we are looking for sources. We're looking for a discussion of previous literature, previous studies, when we encounter a new text. And strangely, this text that became so famous has none. There are no references. There is no discussion of previous concepts or industrial revolutions. Does this really exist? Is there something like a core technology? Are they the first ones to define the fourth industrial revolution? All that is lacking. And so makes it a bit suspicious from an academic scholarly point of view. Nevertheless, for Southeast Asian studies, the term became important. Why? And that's why we have here this initial article in 2011. They were part of a think tank, of a working group organized by the BMBF, the Federal Ministry of Research. The Hanover Fair was launched by Philip Rösler. Maybe you remember him. He was from the FDP, Minister of Economic Affairs, Vice Chancellor of Vietnamese descent. And then later on, after the FDP was no longer in the Bundestag, he had to look for a new position. So he became a senior official at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Don't mistake the name World Economic Forum with something noble. It is a private initiative. It's basically a company. It is nothing that has been set up like UNESCO, the World Bank, or United Nations as a supranational institution. The World Economic Forum was founded by this figure in the center, Professor Klaus Schwab. He's a professor of business studies, business administration, who was very good in networking, in liaising and organizing. And so he founded this so-called World Economic Forum. Actually, it's a rename of European Managers Forum. So instead of calling it European Managers Forum, he enlarged the term and called it then later on the World Economic Forum, 1987. And in order to attract international business leaders and politicians, he had to launch or put some topic every year into the center. And so in the center of 2016 was, by not coincidence, the term Mastering the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which probably was carried by this person from Germany, the German ministry, went back to this non-scholarly article. And then Mr. Schwab has the habit, he's still alive, has the habit of publishing a book in English. This was also translated into Chinese, about the topic of the year. So this is a sequence of books. Every year or so, there's another book by Klaus Schwab about the topic of the year of the World Economic Forum. He sells these books, makes it popular as side business again. Again, if you're a native speaker of English or any other language who only knows to read English as an academic language, you don't know the background of this person here or that person here. You think Klaus Schwab invented the term the fourth industrial revolution. And so what you see in a lot of publications on the fourth industrial revolution, you see the definitions, blah, blah, by Klaus Schwab, although he just followed up on something that was 5 years earlier. Was published 5 years earlier from him. So we have 2016, Davos, Switzerland, the fourth industrial revolution. It then traveled to all over the world within the European Union. Some countries use it, France doesn't, England doesn't, but some countries use it, like Austria or Germany use the term fourth industrial revolution, while it also became popular in Southeast Asia, making Indonesia 4.0, Thailand 4.0, and the national policy on Industry 4.0, Industry Forward in Malaysia. That's why it has become important for us as part of a discourse. We're looking at discourse, where discourse for us is reality, something worth to study. And so if these people in Southeast Asia talk about Industry 4.0, it's important for us. It takes away national budget. It is a certain way government policies are being organized. So it is important for us. Well, look at those Industry 4.0 strategies in context. Europe is not the only one. He's looking at digitizing industries. China is. Made in China 2025 is emphasizing a lot on digitizing industries. So is Japan with its IVI initiative. So now it makes sense. Germany, as part of the old world of Europe, realizes that it's losing market share. They invent a term They popularize it through this World Economic Forum, and then they try to stay relevant in an era that is increasingly dominated by other countries and other producing nations other than European nations. And hence, so that's the context of Industry 4.0. It is a marketing attempt to capture some German cachet on digitizing industry in the very important markets of Southeast Asia and beyond. Well, if you focus on Malaysia, we look, for instance, in this book about Industry 4.0, the National Policy on Industry 4.0 Malaysia, there you find this graph. It shows Malaysia among the so-called leading countries of the world. It's not surprising, it's a government publication from Malaysia. It shows that Malaysia, fat print, is very important. It's a strong current production base, well positioned for the future. And I quoted the World Economic Forum. Okay, so a reason to look at Malaysia. Then if you constantly look a little bit through this Industry 4.0, we do see it's mostly focusing on manufacturing, not so much on the other part of the concept of Industry 4.0, namely Internet of Services, which would include social media, entertaining, that kind of stuff. So Industry Forward is mostly looking and focusing on manufacturing, but there are various other government initiatives in Malaysia, including in individual states, for instance, in Sarawak, which is a very interesting case. There's a Sarawak Digital Economy Strategy 2018-2022 with the objective of making Sarawak the hub for e-commerce in the whole of Southeast Asia. So more important than Peninsular Malaysia, of course, more important than Indonesia, more important than Thailand, Sarawak, according to the state government, is supposed to become the center for e-commerce in the whole of Southeast Asia. And they have various strategies to hold their e-commerce summits and conferences in Kuching. So if you want to do some contemporary Sarawak studies, that might be an interesting topic. So let's get back to our concern for the young and the old and the digital divide, and look at what Malaysia is doing in this context for enhancing access to the internet. Physically, of course, there are programs to hand out subsidized computers, to do better broadband, have community centers where they have one computer for the entire village. All that physical stuff is there, but there are also various attempts of enabling more people to use the internet as a source of education, to increase the digital literacy. And there are two ways that I would like to highlight tonight. One is the so-called OER, and the other one is the Mooc way. Let's look at the terms first. OER is an abbreviation for Open Educational Resource or Resources. It has been used since 2002. There was a UNESCO forum that coined the term, and it emerged in the context of the open education movement, which has roots all the way back to the 1968 generation, emphasizing empowerment, inclusion, anti-establishment, hippies, punks, that kind of is also in the room, Jan. So the open education movement is a movement of people who are interested in increasing the use of the internet, in making the digital divide smaller, having more people included. And so one of the main topics in the 1990s became open access to government sites, open access to educational resources. That's why you have the emergence of Wikipedia in 2001. It came out of that movement. The second part is also related to this movement. It's called Moocs, Massive Open Online Course, or courses. One of the first came from Humboldt University, Magnus Hirschfeld Institute on Sexology, but it has been actually more widely used since 2010-11. So we're talking about 10 years of the use of Moocs, and they both are intended to help against the various digital divides. The question is, however, who organizes it? Who is behind OERs and Moocs? Who does it, and how widely is it used or abused? So let's have a look at that with two examples, both for the OER in Malaysia and the Moocs in Malaysia. One open educational resource in Southeast Asian studies that everybody should know about, and I think you all do, is the emergence of open access digital resources for journal publications, academic journal publications. The first one was my site, which was officially initiated in 2009 at a conference as part of a network of Islamic science citation indexes. ISC is located in Iran, by the way. But it actually goes back to an initiative by librarians from University of Malaya, who have already since the mid-2000s worked on a repository of making internet published Malaysian publications available for Malaysian researchers. My site is a more professional version of the whole thing. It gives you access today to 289 journals from Malaysia, and a total of, like today, 83,388 articles. You can download and read them, most of them as PDFs for free. There's no charges. And it is, of course, incredibly empowering for everybody who sits in a university or in a place where you don't have 289 journals from Malaysia in the library. You would never be able to read what is going on in the University of Utara Malaysia or University of Malaysia Sarawak or whatever, simply because most libraries in the world are limited in their resources. They would not buy a subscription to these journals. By making it open access, the Malaysian government pushed the importance, of course, of Malaysian academia. And by doing so, they also pushed the importance of the agenda from Malaysia, including the linguistic agenda, because about half of the journal publications that I looked at from my site are in Malay, depending in the field. If you look at political science, it's about 3/4 that are in Malay. If you look at biology, maybe 100% or 95% are in English. So it depends on the field. Nevertheless, that means that if anybody around the world wants to study Malaysian politics, for instance, they would have to know that there's this resource. They have to go there and they have to study Malay, the Malaysian way, in order to understand what's going on. If you ever come across a habilitation thesis on Malaysian politics, for instance, that does not include Malay language sources, then you should be very suspicious about the quality of that piece or any article, any PhD thesis. Now, this is the Malaysians were the first ones in Southeast Asia, to my knowledge. There was a young lecturer from Muhammadiyah University from Yogyakarta, working in Malaysia, I think as a PhD candidate at the time, or maybe as a lecturer, who saw that, who started the Portal Garuda in Indonesia, first as his private initiative, and then later on it was taken over by the government as Garba Rujukan Digital, of course, with much more financial support and a respective management. By now, you have more than 1.3 million articles from Indonesian academia, more than 11,000, almost 12,000 journals that are open access. Most of them you can download and read. And they are 95% are Indonesian. This is not only for humanities, Bahasa Melayu, Sastra, Indonesia studies. It is also relevant for if you're studying the biology of flies and insects in Southeast Asia because of climate change. You need the publications that have been published by the colleagues on the ground in Indonesia on, say, insect or mosquito so-and-so. And hence, that has the consequence that also our colleagues here in Frankfurt at the Frankfurt Institute of Climate Research, biologists, should now start to study Indonesian, and other scientists around the world too. Why? Because suddenly all this wealth of research is available. This changes the role of the contribution of Indonesian, Malaysian, and Thai academia worldwide. It gives much more weight to the research that is being carried out. And we, as students of Southeast Asia, have to use these sources from the first semester onwards. It's not possible only to do German or English language sources if you know that most of the discourse is now in Indonesian, Malay, Thai. So down there is, unfortunately, I cannot read it. Of course, Volker Grabowski can. The Thai Journal Citation Index. There are similar attempts also for Korea, for Japan, for India, for China. So a lot of Asian countries are liberating themselves from the hegemony of Western, American-dominated academia in the moment, the last 10, 15 years. This is one side of OER, Open Educational Resources in Southeast Asia, where governments are organizing that. They have an agenda. They want to push, they want to enhance the role of their respective academic relevance of the academia globally, including in terms of language. For us, when you're doing the Department of Languages and Cultures of Southeast Asia in Hamburg or in Frankfurt, it means actually we have a new target group, which is science students who are interested in tropical, whatever, mosquitoes or in maritime biology, who should read the contributions by Indonesian scholars or Thai scholars. And for that purpose, they should be able to learn the language and good enough, well enough, so that they're able to read those sources. Let's have another example. These are individuals and individuals in institutions that are organizing OER. The top is some initiative that Jan van der Putten was part of, maybe still is. It has been organized mainly by Dr. Ian Proudfoot, the late Dr. Ian Proudfoot. It's hosted at a website of the Australian National University. It's called the Malay Concordance Project. You probably know from your studies with Jan and Elsa about this project and Monica. It is a hugely useful source, not only for manuscript studies, but on philology, but also for any sort of historical inquiry into texts from textual history or history as it is documented in texts from insular Southeast Asia. Because the sources go way back and you can basically see how certain concepts developed over the time based on individual texts that are part of this database. Incredibly useful source. You can do also for our colleagues from science, from mosquito studies, that can look at the names of mosquitoes, how they emerged over time and what kind of a role did they play culturally or historically. Also, if you're interested in tsunami studies or in earthquakes and volcanoes, you can look back at the history of natural disasters through the Malay Concordance Project. That's a very important contribution to our field. It's an OER. The second one, I have put here our colleague from Malaysia, Awang Sarian, into the center, a very recent photograph. He is in the moment back. He is now the director of the Institute for Malay World and Civilization, ATMA, at UKM. At the same time, he is the head of the supervising body of Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka, which is has an important role in Malaysian language and literature studies. And on the right side, you see a screenshot about a Zoom meeting, different from today's, where everybody was visible, where Awang Sarian organized a series of so-called roundtables, not with lectures like tonight, but with where everybody could just share thoughts, ideas. So it was a very inclusive deliberation process. And the purpose is to combine, synergize, improve, enhance the various existing government-run, government-financed websites in Malay studies as open educational resource. They're from not just Dewan Bahasa has such OER attempts, also ATMA has some, UUM has some, and so this was an international, actually, inviting also scholars from abroad, an international series of talks about how, in times of where money is limited, how can the existing resources be used better. So this is an example of how government is working on a not the top level, not always the prime minister or the minister. They do change in Malaysia every now and then. But these people like Abang Sarian stay relevant because they are in various levels at where they can do certain things, where they can really realize project like this one. So I would think this is a nice example of two OERs in Malaysia. First one we have in Indonesia and Thailand. First one we have the government support for the big databases. And there you have two individuals, and this is an institutional thing. We have more at the working level initiatives. Now let's go to the Moocs and whether they can help us deal with the problem of the young and the old. Malaysia Mooc has been established already in 2014 to overcome the digital divide. The main target group are university students, age group 20 to 25, so they would fit among those that Jan was mentioning earlier, probably. The problem is, the question is actually, by having a target group with university courses or having university courses as the main element of Moocs, isn't there an implied educational divide, an implied age divide too? Who without academic training would be able to, yeah, maybe penyusunan susu ibu, that's something that people without an academic education would also be able to understand. But asas keusahawan, introductory Japanese language, this is targeting more specialized interests. Some of these courses are incredibly frequented. Hubungan kesepaduan dan hubungan etnik di Malaysia, how 157,000 students are taking this course. Chances are that some of these courses have been made compulsory. So now, of course, there's a problem if you have a government MOOC. And Jan earlier had a question mark about the democracy. As such, is there an open avenue for propaganda? If you have 160,000 students taking one course about ethnic unity and cohesion, cultural cohesion, social cohesion, is that something that's required? It's mandatory? Is the government propaganda in there? That's a question that one could answer. One could follow. So what I would like to do in the moment, I would like to look into some of these MOOCs, because you, as students of the Asia Africa Institute of Hamburg, and I saw Ericsson, also Frankfurt, you might be able or might be interested in joining some of those. Who knows? Let's see what they have on offer. First of all, who is behind that? These are the Malaysian public universities that are participating. Obviously, it's a standard format and a standard design, central website. That means the ministry is behind it. Obviously, all these courses fit into the accredited curricula of these universities. And they are certified. You have lecturers from public universities. The quality is ensured. Malaysia has a strong emphasis on ensuring the quality. They have special agencies for that, including of university courses. In this case, most courses are open for everybody, so you might be able to join. Let's see what there is on offer. Linguistics. Malay is a foreign language. That could be interesting. Oh, Sarawak Malay dialect, level 1. That could be an interesting thing. Pengantar prinsip penterjemahan. Okay, maybe Yanti could use that. Bahasa Iban. That's something we don't have a Lehrauftrag in Frankfurt for that. But maybe some of our students might be interested. Bidayu, why not? Masalah bahasa komunikasi. Systemic functional linguistics. That's a bit too linguistic for our area studies program. But mudahnya bahasa Jerman. That might be something of interest, although unfortunately only 24 students are taking it. So it's not so popular. Linguistics for language teaching. Okay, let's see what else is on offer. Rhetoric, academic writing, a little bit related to linguistics or to literature. Penulis and academic, so you can enhance your writing skills in Malay. Business communication, Pengantar penulisan, leadership communication, academia.edu, Laman social academic. Okay, so that's among the young of us who want to have an academic career that might be addressing the divide in that regard too. Okay, literature and culture. You have literature in the classroom, and then you have a lot about Peradaban Malaysia. You have 2 courses from ATMA, Kursus Kajian Alam dan Tamadun Melayu. methodology, penyelidikan pengajian alam Melayu. So that might be an interesting thing. And Borneo ethnography. Again, we always have in Frankfurt, in Hamburg, in many other universities, we have always somebody who is interested not only in Java, but also in Borneo, Kalimantan. So maybe that might be an interesting thing. Why not join a Mooc with Malaysia if the time fits? So you could learn Iban Bidayuh, but not directly from University of Malaysia, Sarawak. History, unfortunately, also, I only found one Mooc, Falsafah, Abad Pertengahan. Okay, so there's room to expansion. Communication in media is quite popular, including komunikasi antar budaya, administration of archives, enhancing Mooc with OER, publishing ebooks, data mining and knowledge discovery, news writing, Web 2.0 exploration, history of new media. So some of it looks a bit introductory, basic, BA 101 level, but still it might be interesting. If you don't have that in your course in framework in Frankfurt or in Hamburg, we might be able, if you're taking these courses and they are taught by accredited lecturers, we might be able to fit them into our credit point system. Why not? If you're following it through and you're getting a certificate in the end, why not? That could be quite an interesting idea. Political science, sociology, same thing. Why not sit into a course, even if there is propaganda in there, on kesepaduan and hubungan etnik di Malaysia? It's probably very informative. It's a chance that we wouldn't have without the Zoom age. Kenegaraan dan pembangunan mutakhir, that might be also interesting. Kenegaraan, political theory, introduction to women and gender studies in ASEAN. We always have, in Frankfurt at least, several people who are interested in gender topics every semester for the master, also for the PhD. So that might be interesting to liaise, to link up with the network of people at USM that have a Center for Gender Studies, Kanita. Why not link up and see what the state of art is there, what kind of approaches are being taught? It's so easy with Mooc. You don't have to travel there. You don't have to spend a lot of money to install yourself in an apartment. You just participate in a Mooc. And maybe there's also Moocs coming from UGM, Indonesia, Universitas Indonesia. Who knows? So we have this semester, we have a course where our students from Frankfurt are taking advanced Thai at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. Without traveling to Bangkok, it's a lecturer in Bangkok who's teaching them. And I've heard that a lot of Japanese universities are doing the same thing already. So they have lecturers in Thailand teaching them Thai language for students in Japan. So maybe we could expand this idea of Moocs and use it for our own purposes. Religion is the most popular topic for Moocs in Malaysia. It is a wide array of topics, including Islamic banking, investment in gold within Islam, Islamic economy, medical fiqh, you name it, Pemikiran Islam, contemporary, Islamic estate planning, global halal management, business. So if you have an interest in this side of a very contemporary version of Islam in Southeast Asia, the economic side of it, financial side of it, why not take these Moocs and get at least a very good foundation in what's being taught in Malaysian universities? If Indonesian universities offer the same, you can do it in a comparative approach. We could maybe even have a consortium then one day of joining our courses on that. Art, design, architecture, music, these are courses that are usually not taught so often in our universities, in our European centers of Southeast Asian studies. Why? Lack of knowledge, lack of expertise. But why not have a course on Kesenian Melayu or Pembangunan dalam Islam? Islamic architecture, highly interesting topic. So that might be something for those of you who are among the young. You might have an advantage now because you could spend some of your time studying abroad with these these Mooc tools. And then including tourism studies, we have master thesis, master students who are interested in tourism, who would want to work in tourism one day. Why not take that, including Japanese for tourism one day? So now comes the second part of the second part, which is the different player. The first player that we had in these different topics was government universities, public universities. They offer courses that are maybe not so popular. German, IBAN, Bidayuh. They have 24 students. That's okay. It's a government funded course. Now, if you have companies, commercial interests in there, it's different because they look for the profit. This is a quote that you see here, e-learning as industry. Over the last couple of years, the Malaysian government has worked to improve ICT in the country and start to digitize education. As such, the e-learning industry revenue is expected to reach over 2 billion ringgit dollars, sorry. By 2023, learners in Malaysia enjoy a wide range of Future Learn courses, and we take a look at the top 25 most popular. Future Learn is a company. The courses, a question, are the courses that I have shown in English? Yes, some are in English, the government ones. Some are in English. As you can see here, tourism is in English. And here, Ksenia Melayu is in Malay. And a lot of the Islamic courses are also in Malay. But you studied Indonesian with Yanti, and so you should know in Malay too. So that's not a problem. And for the English, yeah. Okay. So, okay, we are at this quote by a company called Future Learn. Okay, Future Learn apparently is one of the big players in the market in Malaysia. They are in many countries. In Malaysia, they list on the website the 25 online course, top 25 online courses as per June 2020. And okay, how to teach online, okay, understandable. Exploring English, basic English, introduction to Malay, emotional intelligence at work, introduction to business management. Again, it looks more like it's a fun beginner's course level, not so advanced. Interesting, in Malaysia, Spanish for beginners is popular, comes with the popularity of Spanish telenovelas. Okay, that's an interesting thing. Business of film, but only, as you can see, introduction to Malay language is among the top 8. Exploring English is much more popular. This is, as we couple this, understand this with the result of this earlier study that I mentioned, the study that I mentioned earlier. Chinese Malaysians are using the internet twice as much than Malay ones, the Malay Malaysians. There's probably a lot of Chinese Malaysians using these tools, improving their English, improving their other interests, and also they might also have to learn a little bit of Malay online if they haven't learned it at school and university level. So, however, for our purposes in area studies, it is interesting to see that the publicly funded Moocs are much more diverse. They are even interesting for us in area studies of Southeast Asia. While those Moocs that are popular on this commercial website sound rather a bit like the Volkshochschule kind of courses that you would get. So interestingly, there's a difference in scope and in things that are being promoted. So in terms of implications of this move towards Moocs is, do we have something like a crowding out? If everybody's doing Moocs, are there topics, are there interests that are being pushed aside, that are being not served because they're not economically viable in the end? So that is the big question. Of course, if the government does things or does not do things, then you might also ask, don't they do certain topics because it might be not fitting well within the political taste, flavor, interest of the ruling groups? There's also that danger there. But in the case of commercial sites, commercial Moocs, you have the problem that the digital divide that we are talking about with the young, they might be able to, maybe combine that with a commercial promoting, marketing, some commercial there. The introduction of Malay language is organized by University of Malaya. Has so far 5,400 people enrolled in it, which is not so much if you compare that with the 12.5 million users that this British Mooc company has attracted so far. It is an offspring of the commodification, commercialization of the British university system. Open University and Seek Limited are offering courses for not for free. They give you the initial level for free, and if you want to have a certificate, then you have to pay. If you want to have feedback from your lecturers, you have to pay. So that's how they make money. That's the business model. To conclude, yes, Malaysia's digital economy is among the leading in Southeast Asia, mostly due because of this period from the 1990s, early 2000s, the Vision 2020. There has been always an emphasis on the digital divide, including for the young. I would think maybe the old versus young is interesting, but it rather is about literacy. High literacy versus low literacy. In some cases, young people are much more adept when it comes to internet use or computer use than old people. And sometimes also it's the other way around. It has to do with literacy and not so much with the biological age. So there might be a differentiation that could be maybe helpful for this lecture series. It's not so much the biological age, it's the literacy maybe that might count also. And so, yes, we do have the term of Industry 4.0, but my question is it just a new era for one of the many projects in the digital strategy of Malaysia, or is it really a new phase or a revolution, as it is claimed by the inventors of the term? In the case of OERs and Moocs, I try to show two different types of organization because I think they do have an impact on what you as a user or what we as observers of this phenomenon can get out of this. There are both advantages and disadvantages if the government or public universities are doing it versus commercial or individual players. And lastly, is the digital divide a reason for public concern and public action, hence government funding? Or is it rather an opportunity for businesses to expand to hitherto untapped markets? That's maybe a question for the entrepreneurs among you. Okay, so with this, I would like to thank you very much, and I stop now the sharing of my screen. Okay.
I don't know whether people can hear me.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Because I can only I was kicked out of the room, and so for part I couldn't listen to you and try to get in, and I couldn't do anything. And now also I see a white screen with youth and aging in Southeast Asia, and I have no idea where that's come from. Maybe do like this. That would be nice. Okay. Thank you so much for this wonderful talk. What I've seen the conclusion, of course, and some before, um, and now I know what these. I often not often, but I once in a while you see these older men. Convening in Davos and talking, and then you think, okay, well, these are the world leaders, and this must be something of United Nations or something. But you nicely, what do you call that? Deconstructed that myth. Yeah, and a lot of others. Wonderful information about that we should that everybody should now learn Indonesian or Malay at least, and to learn about Southeast Asia because more and more information and knowledge and everything will be available and will become available through the Indonesian languages, through the Malay language, so both Malaysian and Indonesian. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And I will be looking for mosquito in the Hang Tuah. That's my next research. Questions. There are a few questions that have come to us, and one you already have responded to. One was by Dea Mantaridini, whether you showed one of these thumbnails of one of the courses about gender in Southeast Asia. And she says they were geishas
Right.
on that picture. So are there now geishas in ASEAN?
Where they are very popular. If you look at literature, of the what was it? 1930s literature in Indonesia. Uh, uh, um, um, ah, Help me.
1930s.
Uh, I forgot the title of the book, but one of the female figures in that book in the 1930s is wearing a kimono.
Mm, mm,
So geishas have been around in popular literature in Indonesia and also in Malaysia for quite some time.
mm,
Of course, our colleagues there from Kanita, the Center for Gender Studies, are playing with the stereotypes
mm,
of, in this case, of gender in Japan, in this visualization. So I would think that they were involved in the formulation of the visual promotion of their MOOC.
mm. Yeah, and of course, straight cheese is I don't know what you call that in English, but manimpali in Indonesia. She's following up on that straight on. How does that show Southeast Asia, gender in Southeast Asia as a general? Because in general, because something Japanese. I mean, you also have these fads in Western arts, of course, and so with rooms being done in a Japanese way, Japanese rooms, and also clothing. And here in the street, we have a Japanese kimono shop, but that doesn't show gender in general. In Hamburg or something like that.
Of,
So are they playing and do we not understand or what?
of, they are quite a powerful big center of
Ah,
colleagues in gender studies. And of course, they only looked for some visual symbol
ah,
of that's catchy and that people can
ah,
understand
ah,
easily.
ah,
Inside, I would think is a lot of sociology. You
mm,
mentioned a lot of sociologists early in the introduction.
mm, mm,
They also can counter that with their own list
mm,
of important
mm,
literature. And also, if you think of the construction of gender in Southeast Asia, yes, you have the historical context, um, layer upon layer upon layer upon influence that is comes at the end to very specific results that we can study in its textual form or in historical form. Um, so, as much as gender studies is a generally informed field of study, we and in our field of studies can contribute to that by evidence from texts from other historical sources. So I don't see any contradiction between the two.
mm. No, okay, and of course this it is working because we getting interested in this in what they do. So and I guess that is the whole trick about for this. Another question is the Spanish interest also because of the influence of the language in the Philippines,
I
do you
don't think
think?
so, to be honest. When I was at USM, one of the most popular foreign language courses at USM at the time was Spanish.
Hmm.
And I asked some of the participant students, why do you learn Spanish after all? Yes, because there are these Spanish language telenovelas from South America,
Ah,
and they want to understand them. Or Mexico, or whatever. I'm not watching telenovelas, but apparently they were very popular,
hmm,
and our students wanted to know what these people are saying.
hmm, hmm.
But talking Philippines, telenovelas from the Philippines are very popular at the east coast of Africa. Um,
Okay.
so they're they're shown at the best broadcasting time, 8 o'clock in the evening,
Ah,
on in TV stations.
hmm,
These are Philippine series.
hmm.
So interesting cases of globalization there.
Yeah, yeah. What I miss is Korean. I'm just
Right.
wondering, is that no longer there or?
I skipped that. I
Ah,
skipped
okay,
that. I
okay.
did the Japanese for tourism, but yes, they also do, of course, Chinese. They do
Yeah,
Korean,
yeah, okay.
Arabic a lot. Yes.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Hafiz has written a long letter, so I just read this. I noticed you mentioned about the 11th Malaysia plan,
Yeah,
which is meant 2016-2020. At the
right,
moment, Malaysia, we are currently finalizing the 12th Malaysia plan,
right.
and the emphasis on technology and digital economy. Recently, is there a question here? Malaysia had just learned digital economy. I am wondering whether you have already had the chance to look in.
Right. So the first point is this
Okay.
the 12th Malaysia plan. Yes, let's see what the next election brings in terms of new government, and then let's talk about the implementation of which part of this 12th Malaysia plan will be really implemented, how much. So that's something we have to wait maybe half a year until the next elections are taking place. But the second part of the question I would like to relate to the
Mm,
racial ethnic issues with digital strategy implementation in Malaysia. Actually, I was drawn into the topic of Industry 4.0 in Malaysia by an invitation from the Dewan Bahasa Pustaka and UPM, who were very, very concerned that the government was too much focusing on English in their strategy for Industry 4.0. And there was a fear that Malay language would be pushed out finally out of this new age, this new era. There was a fear that this claimed Industry 4.0 was really a new industrial revolution, a new era, and
mm,
that this new era would be so revolutionary that the Malay cause would be lost altogether. So this leads directly to the point in the question, underlying among those Malay organizations that doing Industry 4.0 for Malays or for Muslims, events, seminars, there have been quite a few in the last years, is a fear that English will win out because of this new era. And that fear is also there if you are looking at regional discussions, discourses in Southeast Asia, also in Indonesia. Another fear is that with the advent of social media, more and more of the regional languages are being used as media languages,
mm,
written, typed, film languages. And that leads to a greater thriving of
mm,
regional identities,
mm,
which could in the end lead to an explosive situation for the nation state.
mm,
Regionally, because ethnically, with migration, a lot of these Indonesian provinces are ethnically very mixed in
mhm,
the moment, could lead to regional problems, but also for the country as a whole, it could lead to problems of political stability. And this increased use of local languages that used to be not written languages, book languages, but now they have become book languages,
mhm,
is something that also needs to be covered. Yes, and this racial ethnic issues with digital strategy implementation actually is one of the big research fields.
mm,
And I have quite a few colleagues in Malaysia and also Indonesia who are interested in that, concerned about the unintended implications of this push for Industry 4.0 and the smart something, because they see there's an unintended effect on the construction of identity or identities in Southeast Asia. And this unintended multi-ethnic Southeast Asia, that means this unintended effect could be so big that you cannot oversee it anymore. So I have quite a few colleagues who are watching that very carefully.
mhm.
Far from being naive and yeah, fantastic new internet, there's a look at those side effects that are not intended.
Mhm. Okay, interesting. So there's a new field of study ahead of us. But apparently, or that's one question, Sabah is left out of this idea
Sabah is
because you
also
had
there
Sarawak and nothing about Sabah.
because the time was too short. There
Okay,
are so many regions that would be of interest.
okay. Um, so there was a question. Oh, is there a list of Moocs in Indonesia or for
I
Indonesia?
haven't looked into that, I have to say, because the Malaysian case became so big at the end
Mm.
that I had to shorten my presentation to concentrate it just on the Malaysian case. So sorry, in the moment I cannot answer the question sufficiently.
So okay, maybe What is this? Could you send the link for the quiz test into the chat? Do I understand what is meant now? It's on the homepage. So we do this on the homepage, not in the chat, because the chat will go away soon because we are finished. It's almost 8 o'clock, and our speaker has had 4 hours. I also have 4 hours of teaching, so I think we can. Where do I find the homepage? At home. Ah, okay. No, that's. Thank you, Dea. Maybe I'll just let the room open so the chat can go on. We old men and women maybe should take a rest, and I want to take a rest by again thanking our today's speaker for a wonderful talk. It was very nice, and all kinds of new perspectives on the studies of Southeast Asia, which I find exciting and very interesting. And yeah, this is a wonderful start for the whole series. So thank you so much, Arndt.
Thank you.
And we will reward you in a proper way. Of course, one time after Corona, we will invite everybody to Hamburg and have a lovely dinner cooked by Yanti and me and Elsa, maybe, I don't know. Uh, no, no, we will send you a nice thing, I think. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
and thank everybody for her and his attention. Please now go to the website and fill out the form if it's already there. And yeah, and maybe you, but you can't communicate, so maybe you can use the chat. But thank you so much, and
Thank,
stay
thank
healthy,
you.
keep well, and see you soon next week.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye, Arndt. Thanks so much. It was Ranga, can you stay?
Yes, Pak Yan.
Okay. It was quite awful. I was kicked out of the room.
Oh,
So I don't know my connection. Somehow it and I thought everybody was cut off, but apparently no.
I don't know what was happened, Pak
No,
Yan.
but was it interrupted or not?
No, no, no.
Okay, thank God.
Everything was running well, I think.
Ah, okay. No, that then it was only my connection, and I hoped for that, but yeah, I didn't know. I couldn't, and I couldn't get in. I tried to get in a few times, and then he said, "No, you can't. It's bad connection or bad internet. I don't know what." And it's strange because this is the first time something like this happened, and
And
it's bad if I'm
Pak
still
Yan is
recording.
still recording, yeah.
Yes, thank you.